Hello and welcome to Super Insider, a podcast on all things investing, the economy, superannuation and retirement, proudly brought to you by Australian Retirement Trust. My name is Anne Fuchs and today we're talking about the psychology of retirement with an expert. And before I introduce this expert, I'll just remind you that this is general advice, general information only. If you have any questions, please call your super fund, or if you're a member of ART, call us or talk to your financial advisor if you have one. Now, I'm thrilled to be able to be introducing an expert on the psychology of retirement, organisational psychologist, Professor Joanne Earl. Welcome.
Well, I'm very pleased to be here.
Let's just face it, money makes people emotional, and I'm guessing retirement, people only ever think about the money aspects of emotion in retirement, but there's a whole bunch of other components to well-being in retirement outside of money.
That's right, absolutely. And when I first came in to do research in this area, there was really not too many people, a few people overseas doing work in the area to just explore retirement planning and a connection with psychology.
Yeah, so how on earth, how did your career come to this place where you're now a doctor in this, in psychology and organisational psychology in retirement? Sure.
So when I was doing my PhD, I was having a look at what predicts career outcomes for students. So, does being really decided about a career make you a better accountant, for example? And what I noticed when I was going into these organisations is just how much money organisations were pushing into graduate recruitment, graduate retention. And I started having a look while I was there at how much they were spending on employees at the other end of the life cycle. And I thought there's an opportunity here to start working with mature workers and to have a look at the transition to retirement. But there wasn't very many people doing work in the area, so it was a real opportunity for me to open that up.
Okay. So do you think, how long have you been doing this role for at Macquarie University?
I've only been at Macquarie University for about 7 years, but I've been working in this area of retirement planning for about 17 years. So before that at Flinders University and UNSW, which is where I also did my PhD.
Okay. And have you seen a shift in that time, or do you still?
Yes.
You have?
I have definitely seen a lot more interest, not just nationally but internationally. I think there's still a lot of science to wrap around this. Yeah. I think with the advent and the improvements in social media, we've got a lot of people talking about what they think predicts retirement adjustment, but they may not necessarily have the science behind it.
Okay. Interesting. Now, I know you have spoken a lot about holistic planning. Can you explain what that means?
Sure. So this was a model that was developed in the US. It's called a holistic retirement planning model, and it's also dynamic, and I'll explain what I mean by that. So the model was developed by Mo Wang, who's probably recognised in the world as the leading expert in retirement.
And this person's in the US?
And he's in the US, yeah. And we had a look at some of the theories that he had and saw if we could put it into practice.
Okay,
and we could.
Fascinating. Okay.
Yeah. So and then what we've been building on from Mo's work is these 6 key buckets of resources that people need in retirement. Should I tell you about those?
You should absolutely tell me and our listeners and viewers about those.
I'll tell everybody about them. So there's 6 buckets that we like to focus on in terms of what resources you need for a good retirement, for retirement adjustment. There's wealth, so money. There's health. There's social, so social connections. There's emotions and your own sort of psychological well-being. Then there's goal setting and cognition. So all of those components, those 6 components, are important for retirement adjustment. And as those resources go up and down, so does retirement adjustment. But not all of those resources are equal. Some are more important than others.
So retirement adjustment sounds like a technical psychological term.
Mm-hmm.
And does it just mean how you adjust to not working anymore?
It's how you adjust to a new lifestyle, really.
Yeah.
It's how much you might miss work or not miss work, how much you feel like you're making a contribution, being recognised, feeling satisfied that you're enjoying life in general, and that you've made a good decision to retire. So all of those components.
A lot of those things that you've just listed off of the 6, they're all kind of dependent upon each other, because if one is out of whack, you could throw another one really out of whack.
Very true. And when you have a look at those 6 different buckets of
Yes.
resources. They're interconnected. The ones that are most interconnected are finances and health. We found those to be equally important. And if you thought about it as a pyramid, then at the top of the pyramid is finances and health, and they're interchangeable.
It's interesting that health, I think you listed sort of your psychological well-being as separate to health.
I did.
Tell me about that.
So and this is the model that Mo developed. He separated out emotions, and we did find that emotions were important, but the physical health aspects of that were more important in terms of that health at the top of the pyramid. And the reason being that if people have a problem with their health and they've got to exit work early, that might mean that they're retiring with less.
Yeah, okay.
But similarly, if they're going into retirement and they're ill, then they may have to use some of the nest egg they put aside to deal with health issues.
Okay, which then can create worries, which creates well-being, sort of stress, which can then flow on to other
absolutely other areas.
Yeah, and also too probably a lot of these things that we talk about, like that you've just referenced. It costs money to be happy sometimes too, to have societal connections if you wanted to go up to the pub and have a punt with your mates on a Saturday. And
Well, money gives you access to options, doesn't it, really? Yeah. And so whether or not that's social aspects or health aspects or, cognitive aspects or housing aspects, all of those things are connected back in some way. And there is a sort of like an exchange between those different areas. But I think what's most important to remember is that when we're having a look at those resources, that people might have been focusing just on the finance component of it. And if all those other bits aren't being attended to, then that might reduce retirement adjustment.
So do you almost have like a spider map where where they're all? I've got in my head. I've got this a spider map where you've got those kind of 6 things around a circle, and you're almost as a person, you're kind of thinking, well, how am I at here in terms of well-being?
You could, but I look at it as a pyramid, and the reason I do as layers is because some of the resources are better at predicting retirement adjustment than others.
Okay, so tell me about that.
So the top of the tree is finances and health. In the middle, you've got social. And then at the bottom, you've got emotional, motivation and cognition. Okay. So it's that order. So getting those things right at the top of the tree, so health, wealth and social, will account for a lot of the retirement adjustment that we need.
So from a weighting point of view, they've got a much higher
Yes,
weighting.
they do have a more higher weighting. Yeah, that's a good way of thinking about it.
So if our listeners are thinking about retirement and this is making sense to them, how would you explain to somebody how to actually approach this if this is resonating?
We developed some modules that we've got available, and there's an article that at Macquarie Uni that online modules that people can do that will help them to explore some of these areas, particularly the finances and health piece. But what we added into the model that's quite new is the careers area. Because when you leave, work will matter. So if people need to start thinking about resources that they've got, thinking about how and when they'll leave work, how they're going to spend time when they go into retirement, because that will be determined to some extent by their health. So if they haven't got good health, then that will be interconnected. And then also how much money they need to be able to fund the lifestyle that they want to live. So just some key important questions around those 3 areas is a great place to start.
In your experience, do you see people that are the ones who are, you see them on the news, someone who's a 99-year-old, Esme, she's jumping out of a plane. She's been volunteering for the RSPCA. And are there any kind of, reflections you've had about what keeps people healthy, alert and happy?
Yeah. Well, let me just say, I think the reason that she's on TV is because she's probably one of a kind.
Oh, that is
right. So the reason that people draw attention to those sorts of role models is because they're unique. So if everyone wants to use Esme as their measure of success, they're probably going to be disappointed. And for every one Esme, there'll be lots of other people who may experience ill consequences from, drinking, eating the wrong foods, not exercising, all of the sorts of things that would keep us healthy. So I think sometimes the reason that those models get used as examples is because they're extraordinary. And I really hate those images of people jumping out of aeroplanes or, jumping on the back of a jet ski or just doing things that may not be typical activities. Like, what's wrong with pushing a trolley down the middle aisle of Audi?
Yeah, nothing. My husband loves Aldi. He's German. It's his greatest national treasure.
So there you go.
So the cognitive element, I think, something that probably isn't spoken about a lot is cognitive decline, particularly, and the impact of well-being. Tell us about how this impacts retirement and people's decisions.
I think, let me just talk about cognitive decline in general to begin with. I mean, people can be fully functional with mild cognitive impairment and still enjoy life, but there's lots of different reasons. People automatically jump on the idea that, it's dementia, but we look at menopause as one potential source of change in cognition. The other one's mood, so anxiety and depression. When people have low mood affect, then it's likely to affect their cognition as well. We don't necessarily think about that, and it could be transient, right? These things may not be permanent changes. So if you're making a decision based on cognition that you don't think you're going to be able to continue the job that you do now because of cognition, well, it's not a bad idea to eliminate some of those other possibilities before you jump to dementia.
Just go, or that before you go and just quit work because you think you can't, your mental load can't handle it anymore, that you actually go and validate what's wrong with you, go to the doctor before you go and quit.
Absolutely. I mean, getting clarity on what's happening is so important in that area, because the other thing I see is people withdrawing from activities when they've got what they believe to be some cognitive impairment, and maybe this could be things to do socially, so they're not engaging as well socially. One woman said to me one day, I don't play bridge anymore because I can't count the cards, and I'm worried that other people will notice and then they'll eliminate me from their other social activities as well. So getting some clarity.
What did you say to her?
I said to her, well, how do you know that you've got a decline? And she said, well, it's taking me longer to count the cards. I said, haven't you noticed similar things with your friends, that they're taking a bit longer as well? And she said, oh, no, maybe not as much as me. But that's what we would sort of expect to see, where people are putting a focus back on themselves and not looking at those other comparisons. But more importantly, not getting clarity from an expert. So not going to see their doctor or not going to see a psychologist or a neuropsychologist.
I loved before when we were prepping for the show and you referenced something about your teenage daughter forgetting.
Yes.
What was that? That was a cracker of a story.
Yeah, I was at a community event and a woman came up to me and she said, I think I might have dementia, because I was talking about, dementia and not sort of overthinking it. And she said, I put on my shoes and I pulled my socks over the top of it. I think I have dementia. I asked her what had been going on. She'd just moved into retirement village. Her husband had died not long ago. There was a lot of things happening in her life. But I said, I hear these stories all the time. I said, I heard a story yesterday of someone who, when the sugar container was empty, put the scoop back in the sugar container and put the sugar on top. I said, do you think that person has dementia? And she said, it sounds to me like they might. And I said, well, I better get going because I've got to go home and tell my 14-year-old daughter that she could have dementia, But it's those sorts of things where, you think you overgeneralise when something happens. If you'd been 20 years younger, you wouldn't have even considered it as an option.
So what impact does social connection, that a lot of people idolise, that's the wrong word, but sort of this volunteering and in retirement is a thing that gets put up on a pedestal, but not a lot of people actually do it, certainly in the circles
Right.
But what are your observations?
I think people are important in retirement. I'll just say that I think loneliness is a chronic problem. I think being isolated socially can have negative consequences from a health perspective. And what we do see is that when people retreat and they're on their own, then cognition usually declines as well. So people are important.
There is a link.
Yeah, there is. So the loneliness thing is important. So finding where your tribe is, where that new tribe is. And some people will overestimate the amount of connections they have with people at work. and not go out and explore and make those new connections. But I think it's so important for people to connect with other people on a regular basis, even if it's once a month.
Jo, you spoke about, says me who should exercise a lot more, but you speak about people who are planning for retirement and they're like, I'm going to play golf or I'm going to do Pilates or can you maybe give some advice to our listeners and viewers around if you're 62, you're planning to retire and you're going to all of a sudden play golf, what should you be doing? But you're not playing it now.
Right. That's a really good point. Well, 62 is an interesting number because 62 hours is the number of hours that you'll have free if you're not working. And so what we have found when we've done research is for every 5 people that say they're going to play golf, only 1 person turns up. People normally return to activities that they did before work got too busy. So we do see a return and a reinvigoration of things that people haven't tried before. But I really think this is a perfect opportunity to get out there and just try different things. Some of the things are going to be great. They're going to be better than you imagined, and some of them are going to be worse. So trying new things and getting out there and just giving it a go is the only way to really do it, and recognising that it is a bit hard. It is a bit hard if you're the newbie on the block and you might have been the expert at work. But everyone's in the same position at some stage.
I think that's why transition to retirement is as a strategy is so fantastic because it creates capacity to reduce your hours, and maybe that's when you can start adjusting into introducing the new things that you want to do.
That's right.
Yeah.
You can start small, right?
Yes.
So if you're going to think that you're going to be playing golf every week, maybe go 4 times a year to start with.
Just better than not going at all.
Not going at all. Or if you think you're going to, and you've got this big plan to go every day to the gym while you're in retirement, maybe you should just go once or twice now to see if you actually like it. Because if it falls over and you've got no other plans or other things you want to explore, you might find yourself a bit disappointed.
Yeah. So, okay, final words of advice to somebody who is thinking about retirement, and what's your sort of strong words of wisdom who is a woman who knows this phase of life inside and out? What would you say?
I would say first thing is don't just focus on your finances.
Yes.
Think about how you're going to be spending those 62 hours and what you're going to be doing, and make sure that 62 hours includes a focus on your health.
Okay. Focus and companionship?
Well, hopefully, if you've got the right activities, you'll weave that in. So you're not doing a lot of individual things, but you're doing group things, group activities as well.
Okay. Well, it's been wonderful having you on the show, and certainly for our viewers and listeners, we have plenty of information about things like transition to retirement. If you're, Dr. Jo's just said money's really important. So if you're trying to work out how you can fund your retirement, there's lots of educational episodes that we have on Super Insider to help you get up to speed with that. And you can give us a call and do plenty of reading on the website too. And, reference Dr. Jo, Macquarie University, the wealth of resources you have there.
Yes, we've got some online training modules.
Dr. Joanne Earl, that's where it's at. Well, thank you to our listeners and viewers. Thanks for joining us on Super Insider. Don't forget to subscribe, tell your family and friends, and we look forward to you joining us again soon.